Hello YouTube, this is RRFD43 coming to you from the loading room, and I wanted to make my first and hopefully somewhat short video today discussing powder coating of cast bullets. I see these questions come up quite often on some of the forums and Facebook pages about how to get into powder coating your cast bullets, why you would do it, and some tips and tricks that I've found in the past that have made this kind of easy to do. So just to review real quick, I wanted to hit on a couple different things here. These are some of the powder coated bullets I've done. Some bullets that are greased, and then a plated bullet. So typically you need the bullet to obturate inside the barrel when it goes down, which means it has to form into the lands and grooves and block any gases that will jet up the side and cause the lead to come off the bullet as it goes down the barrel. If these gases come up and cause that lead to melt on the way out, they'll deposit, and then you will fill up your grooves, and you'll lose accuracy relatively quickly and have a somewhat difficult time cleaning your barrel out. So typically they would be greased. Different types of grease you can get. This one is actually commercially greased with a somewhat hard grease formula. I believe this one is also commercially greased with a somewhat hard formula. But when I do it at home, I have a older Lyman 450. I do not have the heater, so I cannot run the heavy hard greases, and I needed to use what's closer to the traditional NRA formula. The NRA formula is a little bit soft, and the problem is it would tend to be sticky. It was sticky in the lubricizer, and then when you load it, kind of gets all over your fingers, inside your dies, and sometimes smears on the outside of the cases and causes just a messy gun and loading equipment. I spent a lot of time. I give a lot of credit here to YouTuber 45LC, and he is actually the one who looked at a lot of his powder coating I learned from. I stuck with a lot of procedures that he had talked about, and kind of got some of my own to really make this work. And the object here is, again, instead of having the grease coating, I'm actually going to coat the side of the bullet. This is the primary thing. My whole bullet gets coated in a process, but as I coat the side of the bullet, it's going to run down the barrel and replace any of the grease that you would need. Somewhat similar here to a plated bullet. The plated is a little bit different than jacketed, but again, the jacketed doesn't allow any of the gases to melt, and the plated is pretty much the same thing. But for those of us who cast, because we like to cast, because it makes it more affordable to shoot, this took out my entire greasing step. It also took out a ease of sizing the bullets when I'm done, and it actually turned out to be not too bad of a process when you figure out how to get the powder coat to stick to go in the oven. This is a 250 Lee hand cast that I did, powder coated and loaded. I typically run them at in this is a 45 Colt. I also run them at 45 Thompson Contender speeds for deer hunting out of a Taurus Raging Bull. Additionally, this is a 185 Hensley and Gibbs, and this guy typically would be for my 45 for target shooting, and these are my 356 38 special rounds that I do, just running a standard 38 special load. So those are the bunch that I've got into powder coating. Experimented with powder coating with one coat. I've put a second coat on it with no increase in performance or coverage, or it didn't really change anything to add a second coat. So I've gone back to sticking with one coat. And the primary part is that you properly coat the sides. Once in a while I'll get a little spot on the top or something that might be a little light, But again, that's not going to touch anything, and I haven't noticed any performance changes with it. Doing this again made my loads inexpensive to load, inexpensive to cast, and just generically saved me a significant amount of time in the overall process. So that's why I do it. That's some of the advantages of it over the greasing. There's no mess anymore in the gun. I have taken these rounds coated. I've crushed them in vices, smashed them with a hammer, and I've had no problem with the powder coat sticking. The powder coat I do use is actually just simple Harbor Freight powder coat. A pound cost about $9, and that lasts me for thousands and thousands of rounds. I haven't had any issue. I think I've had two pounds I bought over the time. I've primarily stuck with red. I had the best performance from red. Comments online, you'll see that the white doesn't cover as well. They also have black that you can get, but I've happened to like the red. This here is my old Lyman 450 Lubricizer. Quite old. It works quite well. Very easy to change the dies in here for the different sizes you have to lube. But one of the things that I found that I really like when I cut out using this Lubricizer is not only do you have to have a downstroke, you have to now turn the grease handle, and then you have to force the upstroke and take the bullet out. I would typically have some problems when it wasn't set right. I could have grease that comes out of the die. I could get grease in the wrong spot on the bullet and then have to clean it off. And then again, if I didn't hold the proper pressure keeping the 450 down, the grease tended to get underneath it, and then you had to wipe it off the bottom. So it got to be somewhat of a tedious process. You can see on this guy, as it sat and got warm, it tended to leak grease out of it. And then as it got cooler, that grease hardened up and was somewhat of a pain to clean. So one of the things I don't miss is dealing with this guy. This is my alternate I found that's relatively easy to use. This is the Lee sizing die. I tend to like it a lot better because it's significantly faster. Screws into my single stage press, which I'll show you in the end. This cup sits over it. The top goes over it to hold bullets, and then this simply goes in the press, and as fast as you can drop a bullet on it and ram it up, they will just continuously load till you fill this up. I probably use at least a quarter at a time with the Lee than I do with the Lyman. It just makes it a lot easier. The powder coated bullet sits on here. It does not pull any of the powder coat off as it sizes, and I'm left with a bullet ready to load when I'm done. I did misspeak earlier. The other YouTuber who I learned a lot of the techniques from was Fortune Cookie 45 LC. That's Fortune Cookie 45 LC. You can search him on YouTube and he should come up. He tried a number of different methods. One of them mixing the powder coat with acetone, putting the bullets in the acetone container and shaking them, pouring them out and allow it to dry. I found I did not attempt that. I used his other method where I got a spare tumbler tub. I put the powder coat in it. I will tumble the bullets in a couple spoonfuls of powder coat for about 20 minutes, and they pick up just enough static charge to hold the powder, and then they go in the oven. We'll go out next and we'll take a look at that procedure. This is my tumbling setup I have, and I would suggest if you are going to do your powder coating, it is going to be a little bit messy. You do get a dust that comes from it. The dust does not stick to anything. It will easily wipe off unless it's been baked. So it is somewhat forgiving, but is definitely in a situation where you don't want to have any of this powder or dust to get. I'd also suggest well ventilated. The video really doesn't cover any safety hazards or concerns or anything else with powder coat. I'm sure you can look that up on your own, dealing with your powder coat manufacturer and how you have to do it. Most specifically, with the way I've learned to powder coat, you do not need a gun. I've seen some YouTubers out there. They will line up all their bullets, stand them up. They'll get into different types of paper that it has to be on, or aluminum foil, and it sticks to the bottom. Is the bottom coated? This way, using a tumbler will allow you to relatively uniformly coat the bullets, all sides. No spray gun necessary, no additional equipment other than the spare tumbler basket that I had purchased from Harbor Freight for this procedure. Again, the powder coat will kind of get all over, and it generically is what it is. Powder coat I purchased is the simple red powder coat you get from Harbor Freight. There's nothing exciting about it. It seems to store pretty well. I don't have too much of an issue with it. And that's the powder coat I've been using. That's my second pound that I bought. Multiple thousands of rounds I've done with them. It's not a scientific mix that you have to have for it, but it actually does work out pretty good. Over here you'll see I have my relatively old Ultra Vibe 18 tumbler. Relatively old at this point. It's accessorized currently for polishing brass that I have outside here. It is filled with the typical corncob media, and that's what I use for tumbling brass most of the time. Because I had no place to put my tumbler media when I was going to be powder coating, and I didn't want powder coat in my main tumbler tub, I did purchase this spare tub. It's a little smaller from Harbor Freight. It was a few dollars, and it works out really good. That's a tumbler that takes a lot of the pounding for what you have. Two other accessories that I purchased to kind of make this process work is I got these wire baskets. The wire baskets I picked up, I believe, at Walmart, and these baskets were like some sort of a stationery set you'd have on your desk to hold stuff. They came with a number of sizes and a number of different pieces in the kit. Two of the small pieces are inside on my bench. They hold some other tools and parts and stuff, but these are two of them that I use here to hold the bullets once they come out of the tumbler pot and they're coated and they get put in the oven. The other thing I would suggest you do is, if you don't have a spare baking tray, buy a new one. Give the new baking tray to your wife and keep the old baking tray in your powder coating area. Most of this stuff you can see, some of it's stuck on there, I think, just due to moisture. Other stuff, it's just dry, and it will come off. It will tend to get on your hands. That's where it gets a little bit messy. Other than that, that's really not the issue. But again, this is my set I have. Harbor Freight powder coat, Harbor Freight spare tumbler, a couple wire baskets. I've seen YouTubers try and make them. It's just not worth it. What you really want is you want the relatively small mesh to hold your different size bullets. Be firm enough to hold the number of bullets you're going to process. I process different amounts on the size. It's kind of just by feel as I determine how many I can process and can't process effectively when I do the powder coating. And a tray and just a area that is relatively non-committal to getting powder on, and then just doing some cleanup at the end. Mine takes place out in the garage. That way I keep all of that stuff outside, and I don't have a mess that follows me into the house. Just to show you inside the extra tumbler media, I put powder. I could put about any amount of powder, but what I do is I mix it so as the bullets tumble, they'll typically tumble and vibrate. And when they're vibrating, they're going to pick up a little bit of a static charge, and I want them to bounce inside of the extra powder coat material you have in here. There's some basic experimentation you have to how much, but your object is you want to have a little extra than you really think you're going to need, because in the end you're going to pour the powder coat through the trays. The bullets will remain in the tray, and the extra powder coat goes into the pan to be returned to the tumbler. So we'll set up our process here. Again, having enough powder coat in here, I will typically drop it back in here, and I will reuse it time and time again until I have to add some more. Okay, what we're going to work on with this is I made up some 250 grain Lee 451 bullets, typically meant for a 45 long Colt. Does have grease grooves. I believe in my previous part of the video I showed one of these already powder coated. So I made up a number of these. You have to experiment with how many you're going to put in your tumbler at each time, how many are efficient. My best estimation is the smaller the bullet, the more obviously you can put in there. And the more of the bullet, the larger the bullet, the less you're really going to want to have in the tumbler at any one time. So we're going to add them over there. The other thing is you pretty much want to make it so you have just about one level of bullets in the wire pan when you take them out of the tumbler. It's less likely they're going to stick together. You can shake them around, you can spread them apart. The biggest problem you really have is if any of these guys are touching when they're hot, if they cool, they will stick together, and you'll be very surprised how efficiently they do stick together. They're difficult to get apart. Part of my procedure is a water quench when they come out of the oven. I'll demonstrate that at that time. And if you get them shaking in the tray while they're hot, and I keep them moving around, and I quench them immediately in a cold water bath, not only do I have a little increase in my Brinell hardness, which is going to be more advantageous anyway, I prevent them from sticking together. So that's usually my my procedure when that happens. They're all going to go in the tumbler. They're going to tumble for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to put them in the oven. Okay, bullets have all been placed in the tumbler, and we'll get this guy tumbling. Since we don't need to listen to this for 20 minutes, we'll be back. Okay, welcome back. We let the bullets take a little spin in the tumbler here. Tumble for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes is a rough number. That's my experimentation where I came out pretty good. Tends to build up a little charge, hold the powder coat onto the bullets. Your luck may vary by weight of the bullet, by your humidity. It could be a whole host of things, so do some experimentation in there. Conveniently, where it works out is if you tumble for 20 minutes, you are going to bake for 20 minutes. So if you have a lot of bullets and you have to make numerous trips, you can have a bunch tumbling and a bunch baking for 20 minutes and get a pretty good procedure down and go through hundreds, if not thousands, of bullets in a number of hours. Unfortunately, that's what it takes, and here we go. So this allows me to pour these bullets out into the basket. Get a little shake and separate, and now you can see there is a number of powder coated bullets ready to go into the baking procedure. pretty conveniently. We're going to have the ability to return any of the powder coat to our tumbler here for some future use. As you can see, it is a little bit dusty, so that's why I suggest having you do your powder coating outside. Here we are inside. We have our oven heated up to 400 degrees. Your luck may vary with those who live in your house how you do this, but this works out for me. I don't really particularly get any odor or anything else during the bake process. It works out, and I haven't really caused any problems in the oven. I.e., most of the powder has been shaken off the bullets prior to coming in, and they're in the tray. Pretty much the tray is going to go in the oven, and they're going to set and bake for the next 20 minutes. For my next part, when the bullets come out, we're going to need a couple things. You're going to need a good set of mitts to hold on to that pan of very hot bullets, and you will need some sort of a pretty firm spatula. When these guys come out of the oven, I tend to start shaking them on that tray, and I keep them shaking so they don't stick together as they cool. That's the whole key here from keeping the powder coat sticking together. So typically I will hold the tray, I will take the spatula, I will agitate them around a little bit if they tend to stick, and then they're immediately going to go into a cold water bath. Cold water bath is again going to increase our Brinell a little bit, and it's going to cause the powder coat to set quickly without having any of these guys stick together. Okay, here we are 20 minutes later. We're coming out with some nice hot bullets, and this is the key where you really need to get them moving on the tray so they don't stick together. And once you get them rolling, right in their water bath. And as soon as you do that, you get some nicely powder coated bullets here, are ready to rock and roll. Once in a while you'll have stickers, as I call them. These are two that decided to stick together. Sometimes they'll break apart pretty readily, but sometimes they don't. If you don't shake them before they go in, you'll have almost all of them sticking or touching in some corners or what have you. So there they are, all are coated. And we're going to dry them up, and then we're just going to do the sizing process, and I think we'll be done. Here we have our completed 250 grain Lees. And now what we're going to do is we're going to size them. I use a Lee sizer, and it is pretty much about as fast as you can push the bullets up on the sizing pin. They will size, and it's a heck of a lot easier than the two strokes on the Lyman 450. And this doesn't pull any of the powder coat off, and I've had really good results. You can do 100 some odd rounds in just a few minutes and turn right around and put them on your press and be ready to go. Here's the finished, sized, and ready to go bullets here. All powder coated. Obviously, we will need to make sure our driving bands are powder coated. That's where we're going to have any cutting issues. You can see on these the bases got coated, tips get coated. It's pretty much a very easy process. Once you get yourself spinning, it's pretty easy to kind of keep things going. So YouTubers, I hope this was pretty good for you here. A little experimentation on my part for my first video. I'm sure you can take many of the procedures I did and you can change them for your process, for your bullet size, and how you see fit. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you out at the range.